Okay, so as you saw, calculating sales tax is basically multiplying the sale amount by a specific percentage, if that item is taxable. The business collects that money and then passes it through to the proper tax agency. But don't be fooled, things can get complicated quickly. For the sake of my blood pressure, I'll let one of my colleagues fill you in on the details.
Sales tax is not just what is the retail price of a item multiplied by the rate, and that's it. For one thing, it is different all over the country. But also to complicate things a little bit further, there was a tax ruling by the Supreme Court that actually changed sales tax as we know it the last few years. And it was a very famous ruling. They call it the Wayfair ruling. And basically, what happened is that there is now something called Nexus. There was Nexus before, but it was usually physical presence Nexus, meaning if the business had a physical presence in a state, then they would be subject to collecting sales tax based on certain criteria individual to each state. But now with this Wayfair ruling, we had something called economic presence nexus. So it could be that a business has never stepped foot into a particular state, but because of the amount of economic activity, quantity or dollar amount that they have, they may now be needing to collect sales tax in that state. So it really does make things a lot more complicated because of that. Then, of course, every state has its own rules. So in some states, it could be by county that you have a surtax up to a certain dollar amount, or it could be just a percentage that goes for forever, or it could be based on whether or not they are services or whether they are tangible goods, or it could be whether or not the services go with the tangible goods, like shipping. Is shipping taxable? In some states, yes. In some states, well, no, if it is charged with the goods that you're shipping. So there are some very nuanced rules that need to be explored for a client to make sure that that sales and use tax is being handled properly. One of the things that we often find is that it can be a bit overwhelming, and there are many rules that can come into play. We've experienced rules with general contractors versus subcontractors having different rules. The good thing is many states are trying to make it where you can call in and ask questions and they will give you guidance. And many departments of revenue in various states are very, very good and very helpful. However, some states also have a different way of collecting sales tax than other states. Some states, you remit all of the sales tax for the state and any counties or other jurisdictions in that state to one central place, explaining how it should be broken out, and they will send it off to those various areas. Then you have some states that have decided that they're not going to do that. You just send in the state sales tax, but then you have to contact each of those other jurisdictions, often by county, and remit to those. So again, it can be very different state by state. Now, at first, it doesn't seem like that alone is complicated, because once you learn the state that you're in, you're good, until you find out that your client is selling in other states, and then it can get more complicated. So there is a lot that can go on with that. So how do we figure it out? Again, first of all, contacting the state or the Department of Revenue in your area would be good, or in another state. We've contacted many and they're very, very helpful. However, you often want to have those things in writing. So many times sending in an email or a question and getting responses is very helpful. And they often have their rules online, but again, it can be complicated. What we often recommend is ultimately that our clients are responsible for knowing that, of course, with guidance from their bookkeepers and accountants. They would be doing some of that research and understanding that information. Ultimately, it is the client's responsibility, of course, but we want to give them guidance. So many times we have engaged with accounting firms that might specialize in sales tax. There are also companies that will do nexus investigations and nexus determinations for clients. There are also software applications that can integrate with the e-commerce platform or accounting platform that can also provide that type of assistance as well. The guidance that we often will share with bookkeepers as they're getting started as it relates to sales tax. If a client was a retail store in one location, then that's pretty simple typically because they have one sales tax rate to deal with. And so if they had to manually update one sales tax rate, probably not that big of a deal and is not going to be a gross amount change typically in one location. But if we have clients that are working in multiple states or in a state that has a lot of complicated sales tax rules and remittances that need to be done, we always want to be working with a software application that is going to manage that process for us because it is going to just make a big difference in the ability to serve that client. Otherwise, it can be quite onerous on somebody to be keeping up with that. So again, sales tax, to say that it's complicated, that alone might be an understatement depending on the client that you're working with. Again, the state that they're in, the type of goods and services that they sell, the types of customers they have, all of those things can play a part in it. Not to mention just the rules themselves and how the services are done and not done, and as far as sales tax and what items are taxed, and then how to remit that, how to track it, how to report it. All of those things can come into play. So there's definitely some research to be done for the jurisdictions that they need, as well as possibly a consultation with somebody that can assist and is an expert in those areas and possibly the industry that your client is in.